Good morning to one and all. A warm welcome to our correspondent, Reverend Sister Shamla, our dear Principal, Reverend Sister Emily Resivas, Sisters of the Management, respected heads of the department, my learned colleagues and dear students. I take this opportunity to specially welcome our eminent speaker for the session, Ms. Varsha Bhargavi, who is here to enrich the knowledge of our student community. This talk has been initiated by Anti-Ragging Cell on the occasion of World Human Rights Day, that is 10th December, is observed as every year to commemorate the day the United Nations General Assembly adopted the United Declaration of Human Rights Day in 1948. It marks a massive milestone in the advancement of humanitarianism. The UDHR proclaimed the rights which every human being is inherently entitled to. It is not dependent on race, color, religion, language, or gender. Hence, human rights are necessary to provide every human the basic dignity one needs to live. That is, the human is the choice as way they want in life and how they want the things to be in life. So, I warmly welcome Ms. Bhargavi to introduce the speaker today. Thank you, Ms.
It is good to give the thanks to Almighty God for all the wonderful deeds. Good morning, one and all present here. Today, on this wonderful morning, I take the opportunity as an honor to introduce our today's speaker, Ms. Varsha Bhargavi. Ms. Varsha Bhargavi is a policy analyst and a gender sensitization trainer at Where Are the Women Collective. She is also one of the advisors to Telangana Child Rights Protection Forum. She is also a strong advocate for women's and children's rights and petitions to the state government to enforce the policies in women and child protection by amplifying the voices of social activists. She spent a couple of years, that is from 2017 to 2019, working as a state coordinator in the State Resource Center for Elimination of Child Labour, as drafting several state-level policy documents, which includes Child and Adolescent Labour Amendment Act 2016. During her tenure, she also regularly trained the labour officers, police personnel, NGO partners, officers, media personnel, and trade union members on gender issues and women child protection laws and enforcement techniques for the same. She currently conducts customized gender sensitization workshops for senior year graduates, corporates, NGOs, and trade unions, along with training and implementation of prevention of sexual harassment for women and child. She also focused on as a visiting faculty for Telangana Police Academy, training new recruits on gender issues and labour issues. She also published research papers on unpaid labour by women on child.
We are celebrating the International Human Rights Day. This has got a legacy of 73 years. But before we start, we will read our own preamble, which is linking with all the human rights, the 30 human rights that we have, which are already there in our constitution. So this seminar is probably, if anybody takes interest in reading the constitution and the tenets and the articles in the constitution, I think most of the human rights are already covered. So we are in that fortunate country. We are blessed to be in India, where human rights are already covered and given to us by Baba Saheb Ambedkar sir when he drafted the constitution. So before we start, we begin with the preamble. If anybody wants to volunteer, take this privilege of reading the preamble for us. Thank you. So we'll all stand up and we'll read after her. of India,
we the people of India,
having solemnly resolved
to constitute India
into a sovereign socialist,
into a sovereign socialist,
secular democratic republic,
republic,
and to secure
and to secure
to all its citizens
to all its citizens
justice, social,
economic
and political
and political
liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation in our Constituent Assembly
in our Constituent Assembly
this 26th of November
this 26th of November
1949
1949
do hereby adopt,
do hereby adopt,
enact and give to ourselves this Constitution. Thank you.
Something that we cannot do without. It's as important for our existence as human beings. And human rights is given to us 73 years back in a common agreement by all the nations, by United Nations, and saying that this is something that you all need just to survive, just to live. So a part of human rights is every year we have a theme. This year the theme is unity, and we just go to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah. Reducing inequalities and advancing the human rights. So equality is something that's a very, very important issue right now. Though you may say that it's there in our constitution, we have a right to equality, there is gender equality, but we all know as women, we feel that we are unequal in many spaces. And it's not just women. There are several other segments of population across the world who do not enjoy the same equality or the same freedom or the same rights that we all have. So it's very important for us to reiterate what human rights are, why they are important, and why it is more essential in today's context. When we look at it, can we go to the next please? Yeah. When we look at the Declaration of Human Rights, it's done in 1948. I'll leave the history part of it, you can always Google it. Most of the information that I have put up here, even including the 30 human rights, are already there, available for you on UNCHR website, and you can find them out and you can see how they are applicable. What we are going to talk today is why they are important and how we can link it to the current scenario, what we are facing in India, what we are facing in the world, and a larger context at a macro level and also at a micro level to see whether human rights, how human rights are applicable to you in your own personal lives, within your family members, within your neighborhood, within your community, your college, and maybe go to a level next again. So this seminar, I will keep it very informal. You can stop me anytime in between if you want to ask any questions. Although I don't claim to know all the answers, but what we can do is we can always start a discourse and maybe the answers will evolve eventually. So the human rights, they are not granted by any nation or though United Nations declared it, they are not granted. They come into existence because we are human. That's it. Irrespective of the gender, irrespective of the class, caste, region, nationality, language, or whatever the divisive things that differentiate between you and me and all of us, each of us as individuals, we have a right to enjoy these human rights, and these are the rights given to us just because we are born as humans. As simple as that. So whatever the human rights, all the 30 human rights that are applicable to you are applicable to me, to her, to everyone who is here in this. And they are very individual, yet they are very collective also. So rights are, when you speak about them, you can speak about it from the point of view as an individual perspective. Like for example, freedom of speech is one of the human rights. Freedom of speech is very important for you. Each individually, you would love to speak up, you would love to express your opinion, and as women, it's more important. It gets more important to do that every day. Yet, it is also a collective. Just because I was given the freedom of speech, that doesn't mean that I can go ahead and abuse anybody. So that's also a collective right. So we need to recognize there is a very fine line between all of it, but we need to recognize what is very important, what is for the collective good and greater good, and to survive as humanity, to survive in a peaceful environment. So when we look at it, it cuts across a class, religion, language, geographical barriers, everything. It applies to everyone. Go to the next. So why are human rights essential? As she rightly said, that because equality is very important to us. When we look at the foundations of the freedom of any nation, not only just India, but any other country that you're looking at, any other community, any other group of people, or even individuals, it's the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. In order to have this peace prevail in the world, we need to have these human rights. And when we look at it, in freedom of speech I've already covered, though, and it's a belief, and freedom from fear. If you take, for example, in an autocratic society, where if you are living in fear, in order to go out, in order to speak up, human rights protects you from that. You can speak up. It grants you the freedom of speech, and yet it also protects you from freedom from getting afraid to speaking up or to doing things or to exist, just existing. And human rights should also be protected by the rule of law. When we said rule of law, every country has drafted a set of rules, set of laws, sorry, to protect these human rights for its citizens. So when we look at, for example, our bonded labor law, slavery and bonded labor is eliminated in India. We got that law in 1976. So why did we get that law? We don't want to abuse people and push a certain segment of people into servitude. There are no slaves. Slavery has been abolished. So that's the reason why we drafted the bonded labor law. So that means it's protected by rule of law. So anti-slavery law is also there, covered in the human rights. And we enacted that. We have a child labor law. We have a prevention of sexual harassment of women. We have several laws that we put in place in our country on the principles which are built on the principles of human rights. Now, when we look at the last one, to promote friendly relations between the nations, this is also very important because we all, collectively, we have to coexist in a peaceful environment across the world. Though we are divided by geographical boundaries, divided by our governments, our rules of the land, yet we are all human beings. So it's very important for us to have human rights and abide by them and respect them, not only for ourselves but also for our fellow citizens and our other country citizens also. And that promotes the friendly relationships between the nations. So we don't outrightly hate each other, outrightly abuse each other. We respect. What are human rights to me are the same thing as the human rights for somebody from any other country that we are not necessarily agreeing with. The human rights are valid for anybody else who don't even agree with us. Let's say I'm opinionated about a particular thing. That could be my opinion. But that doesn't mean that I have a right to abuse anybody or negate anybody because human rights prevents me to do that. Go to the next. In Indian context, I've just listed down all the human rights over here. We have 30 of them which are bestowed to us. Everything, COI means Constitution of India. Our Constitution of India covers each one of them. Again, we can have a discourse on everything. We have right to be free and equal. We have a right to freedom. We have a right to equality. That's in Article 14 of Constitution of India. We have freedom from discrimination based on the race, gender, language, or religion or faith. That's also covered. Right to life, that is to exist, to breathe, to exist, to live in this country. That's also covered in Article 21. So on, so on. Freedom from slavery, as I said, we have Bonded Labor Act and we have Child Labor Act, and we have rules regarding the employment, like there is minimum wages, there are Interstate Migrant Workers Act. So all these rules are drafted, keeping these human rights in perspective. And freedom from torture is something that when we have anybody in custody, even if they are arrested, we are not supposed to torture them. That is in Article 21 also it is covered. That's a part of Constitution of India. So I'll just quickly elaborate a little bit on number 5, freedom from torture. That doesn't mean that we cannot enforce laws when there is a crime that happens. We do enforce laws, the laws prevail, but we do not abuse human rights even when somebody is arrested or kept in custody or kept under confinement under a particular law enforcement. Let's say, for example, a thief, a robber who steals something, he's been arrested. There is no right for the law enforcement authorities to abuse this person when he is waiting for his justice until his punishment is given by the judiciary in a court. So human rights protects that. And right to recognition before the law. When we said right to equality, our Indian Constitution is so wonderful. When you read the preamble, we have highlighted some justice, equality, fraternity. So you have identified these keywords. Keep those keywords buzzing in your mind. I think human rights will be very, very easy for you to comprehend. So when you look at the last one, the 6th, right to recognition before the law, everyone is equal before the law. You must have heard this as a very big punchline in the movies. Everyone, no one is above the law. Everyone is equal in front of the law. So that means that we need to start looking at human rights as an equal thing. So it keeps on reiterating the same concept again, saying that we are all equal. And this year's theme is also on equality. However, we may feel that we have been sidetracked a little bit here and there, but that's the reason why we need to have this kind of seminars, this kind of discourses, so that we don't deviate from human rights. We'll go to the next one. And then right to equality before law. Law is applicable for everyone. Right, access to justice. In India, how many of you know that we can get a free lawyer in case if you want to, want to go to the court? How many of you know that? We have free legal aid. Do we have free legal aid? We do. We do have free legal aid. I think you need to look up a little bit more about the law if anybody is taking interest in pursuing law as a career from here. There is State Legal Services Authority, which offers completely free service. It is created for the citizens of the state, of Telangana state. They have an office. And not only that, not everyone from the remote district, let's say Mancherial or Khammam, can come to Hyderabad and access the free legal aid. They can go to the District Legal Services Authority and avail the legal aid. So that's also been covered. If you look at our constitution and our government structure, we've got wonderful protection mechanisms. There are some gaps, I do agree, but we already have these protection mechanisms prevailing in our country, in our state. Only thing is that it needs a little bit of a awareness. We need to start accessing them. You can have free legal aid in India. If you don't have enough money to hire a lawyer, this District Legal Services Authority will give you a legal aid. They will assign a lawyer. They will route you to the legal aid center, and you can get a free advocate, where the state takes care of the payment. You don't have to pay them. And freedom from arbitrary detention. This is something that you need to follow through the news and everything. I think recently Sudha Bharadwaj has been released on bail. So that's something that the Supreme Court has recognized, that you cannot arbitrarily detain anybody without any particular case or any offense. Right to free trial. This is another thing. These are all interlinked with the laws and our judicial thing. Presumption of innocence. Nobody is guilty unless proven. So that's also there. A presumption of innocence. It's there in our judiciary, which we follow. Right to privacy. Number 12, I think we would like to dwell upon. If you have any questions, please stop me. We all have to have that right to privacy, which is why many of the women protection laws are devised in such a way that women are protected in several ways. Like there is something called as voyeurism, there is a punishment, there is an IPC section. If somebody secretly films you when you are in your changing room or something like that, when you are doing a private act, you can actually sue them, and there is a law that punishes them also. So right to privacy is not just about women, but it is equal to everyone else. If you want to have any act, anything to do in private, that's entirely yours. And if you look at the Telangana Police Department also, we have a very strong cyber security force right now. So if your privacy has been violated, let's say your personal chats or something are leaked outside, you can always go to the police and complain, saying that your right to privacy has been violated. You trust somebody, and let's say it's your family member or your friend who reveals those unwanted information into the public, this law protects you, and we already have that in our constitution. And then freedom of movement. Again, freedom of movement is also linked to everybody. To move freely within one's country. You don't necessarily need a permission to go from one place to another. You want to quit one job, go to another job, you're free to do that. It's covered in Bonded Labor Act also. So when you look at the employment contracts and everything, if somebody is binding you, saying that no, you cannot leave this particular place, that means they are violating your human rights. You need to be aware of that. So you can always call it out. You can always say that, yes, I do have a freedom of movement. I can move. I can move not just from this job, but from this geographical location, from this particular place to another place, and nobody can stop you from doing that, including this classroom if it is getting a little bit overwhelming. Right to asylum. This is applicable to places where you have political unrest or some kind of threats or natural calamities, where people want to migrate from one place to another. Let's say if there is a war zones where you must have heard about the refugees moving from Bangladesh and coming to India. So, and there were refugees from various other neighboring countries during the war-ridden times, and who moved from one place to another. That's protected by the right to asylum. So you can say, you can request for a permit to enter another place, saying that you fear for your life and you need that kind of protection. And our Article 21 in Constitution of India partially covers that, but we also abide by the UN rules, where we offer protection to refugees who seek asylum when they come to India, which is the reason why we have many refugees. We have, I think, 20 million refugees. India is home for 20 million refugees who are safely given homes in India to live here. And right to nationality by naturalization. Yes, we are born in India, so we have a right to nationality. That's also a part of our human rights. right to marriage and to found a family. How many of you truly believe that? I'm asking from women to women. How many of you truly believe in this right? Number 16. Can we raise the hand? No? No one believes this? No? Why? Is it mandatory to get married? No. Then why we don't have a right to marriage? Why do you think so? Give me any answer. As I said, nothing is right or wrong. Anyone? No one? I'll stop a little bit about human rights. Let's talk like women. Because human rights is like, oh, I don't even have freedom to go, wear a skirt and go onto the main roads without getting harassed. I'm sure most of you are thinking in that way. This is a human right. This is, again, there are various shades to it. How we look at human rights is, yes, they are existing, number one, and they are given to us just because we are humans, irrespective of the gender, irrespective of our social standing, irrespective of our geographical boundaries. But at the same time, when you're looking at right to marriage, all of you fell silent. This is because of the sociological structures that are binding us. Probably at your age, I was also quiet like this. I wouldn't even speak up. But then, you as empowered women, that's the reason why you have that luck and the opportunity to be here in this room. So for you to recognize right to marriage and to find a family, now you know that. You can always say it out loud. Maybe it will be received in a good light or maybe not. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to speak up. You have a right, you have a right to say what you want in a marriage. You have a right to say and express your opinion. Freedom of speech, remember? You have a right. So these human rights are all interlinked with each other. So I'm not talking about number 16 as an isolated thing. I'm talking about the freedom of speech, the right to privacy, all the other human rights that are existing there. Each of these human rights, the 30 human rights, are interlinked with each other. So yes, you have a freedom of expression, you have a right to privacy, you have a freedom of speech, so you can say what you want in your life, especially when it is a very life-changing decision like a marriage, life-changing decision of starting a family. How many of you think that motherhood is the best gift for a woman? Okay, I see half at least. Okay. But do you know, a woman's body changes permanently when she carries a baby, she delivers. She may not be able to do that. She may be looking very resilient, she may be looking very strong in order to protect her child, but her body will never get back to the original youthful form what she had. You can ask your mothers when you go back. It changes. But yet, why do we think that motherhood is a very big blessing for women? Because we are sociologically, yes, somebody was saying? Yeah.
To give a birth is a gift now. Like we are giving life to another human being is always a gift for a mother now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, indeed, that defines motherhood. But then, the question that I'm asking is, why is it glorified? Is that a choice for every woman? May not be the choice for every woman. Maybe a portion of a part of the girls who are sitting over here, women sitting over here, may not be interested in having children. But that doesn't make them any less women than the women who choose to produce babies, than the women who choose to stay in a marriage. So that's where right to equality also comes in. So you're not allowed to look down on a certain woman just because she chose not to have children. She's not any less than the woman, than the mother who chose to give birth to a child. Yes, it's a miracle, it's a wonderful thing that happens, it's a miracle of life when a baby is born. Absolutely, we are all born that way, and we should all be thankful to our mothers for bearing us. But at the same time, it's a choice. So that is what human rights is all about. So when you're looking at it from isolated, each human right as it is, it may not make sense. Like, that's why I know all of you fell silent when you know that, like, you won't have a say in the marriage. But when I said you had freedom of speech to speak up, to express your opinion, it makes sense. Is it clear? Anyone wants to reflect anything more than this? Okay, so that's how wonderful these human rights are. So they are not individual standalone rights; they are interlinked with the other human rights. Right to own property. How many of you know that? What percentage of Indian women own property in India? Wild guess. What percentage? 2%? Okay. Equal rights? Equal right is there, but what's the actual statistic I'm talking about? How many women own property? We are for 20%, okay, if I have 2% and I have 20%, we are somewhere in between. Only 13% of Indian women own property. But yes, as you rightly said, we enjoy equal property rights in families. I think 1956 we got that rule of equal property. We have a property share. But only 13% of Indian women enjoy equal property rights. Now, the question comes, why is it that? Why is it that why we are not given property? Any takers on that? I know what men would say. I know what brothers in the family would say. Oh, we pay hefty dowry to you when you get married, so you don't get a share in the property. Is that right? Yeah, you hear that all the time. You hear that in television serials, you hear that in movies, you hear that in your families also. But then there is a law which says Anti-Dowry Act, that's punishable under law. So somewhere we are missing the point where we are supposed to be equal. Our equality, and when we as women don't stand up against, say, I don't want to give dowry when I get married. I don't. When you tell your parents that, like, no, I don't want you to give dowry or give any kind of gifts. Instead, like, have a property right, exercise your right to property, and say no to dowry. Do you think you are on the right side of the law or the wrong side of the law? So, what is stopping you from saying that? Freedom of speech? So there you go. Now you are linking. Now you are linking. So because you don't have the freedom of speech, you cannot stand up and say that, yes, I want to marry only at a certain age of my choice, of my preference. I want to say no to dowry, though you know it's against the law, it's punishable. So everything is interlinked. So that's how you look at human rights. I'll come to the next. Freedom of religion and belief. We see so many sad incidents and news saying that ghar wapsi. That's something like, converting into a different religion. Is that an individual right or is it a collective right? It's an individual right. You all agree on that? So today if I decide to convert into XYZ religion, Is there any law that should stop me from doing that? Can they forcibly convert me to another certain religion? Again, use your mind. When you start reading the news, use your mind and try to apply human rights into it. We'll go to the next one. So when we are looking at all these things, link human rights with the issues, link human rights with the news that you are reading, link human rights with the politics that you experience in your life, at your home, at your community, at the state, within the government, outside the government, on the streets, within your classroom, outside your classroom, everywhere. And most importantly, these human rights, you will find most of the violations as women, we don't enjoy all these 30 human rights. You know that our rights are at stake. That's the reason why you need that freedom of expression. If you have that one, start exercising, start expressing, start speaking up. Whenever somebody asks you a question, answer it in a way that comes to your mind, which is not derogatory, which is not abusive in nature, which respects the other person's human rights also, but do answer the questions. Do raise the questions, do raise the doubts. You need to speak up as women, because if 50% of the population stays mum, don't speak up, we are all collectively at stake in losing all our human rights. As women, we need to recognize that. When something, if your friend is getting harassed on the street, speak up for her. That may not prevent the crime, that may not, but at least you did the right thing. You can go home and say, I upholded the human rights for my friend. You can be at peace, and that's what human rights are very important, not just for you, but for collectively for all of us. I'll only speak from the gender perspective, because in the subsequent slides we are going to analyze how human rights are linked to women and how they are linked to the gender as existence, and how we women are among the most disadvantaged groups in the society, where our human rights are violated systemically at every level, within the family, and sometimes we don't even recognize our rights. We don't even recognize that we need to speak up. We don't even recognize that it is a violation of your right, because we have internalized and we are sociologically conditioned, saying that नहीं लड़की बहुत कम बोलती है इसीलिए सुशील है, she is very polite and she is very docile, so she will make an ideal bahu. This is the kind of tag. If you look at Sunday matrimonial ads, you will see many requirements for brides in that way. So freedom of expression is a very important and intrinsic part of our lives, where we need to speak up, yet respect the other person's human rights. Should not be in a derogatory manner. You are speaking up for yourself, standing up for yourself. Freedom of assembly. If you don't like something with the government, can you go out on the street and protest? Yeah, but wear masks and practice social distancing. But yes, you can protest. Our Constitution of India gives you the right to protest. If you don't like a particular decision, yes, you can. You have a very important right where you can express your dissent. You don't like something, you can. How many of you know Right to Information Act? You do? Have anyone filed Right to Information? Oh, you should try that. You'll get some amazing responses. I filed in 2019. I filed one right to information with the state government, Telangana state government, asking how many sexual harassment cases were there reported at workplaces, because 2013 we got the act. So I filed it in 2019 asking for the details. I got responses from 19 districts out of 33, and they said 0 cases. So 19 districts are free of sexual harassment at work. Can we take that?
No.
We all want to apply for jobs in those 19 districts and go there, right? If that is the case. But then that's how. So right to information is something that government has given to us, which we are not using. So now we are calling it out. I'm writing to individual district collectors saying that why no cases have been reported. Because when you go to the district office, your district collector's office, there should be a board which says like, this is anti-harassment helpline and everything, that numbers should be displayed there. There are no boards, so hence no women will report them. So where are the rights violated? Somebody is not upholding them for you. So that is something that is right to partake in public affairs. You can actually start this discourse. You can talk to your district collectors. You can talk to the officers who are in the government and ask them questions. Right to social security. We have right to food in India. Right to social security is also something similar. We have subsidized housing, double bedroom houses in Telangana. We have 12 kgs rice, I think 1 rupee a kilo rice going on as a food subsidy scheme. So all those things these are the social protections that the government enforce and gives it to us. We may not be in the below the poverty line, but there are many, the majority of Indian population fall below the poverty line, which we'll see in the subsequent slides. And since everybody has got a right to food, right to life, the government is obligated to provide them with subsidized food and free ration. Right to work. If next time if anybody stops you saying that no, आप लड़की है, आप काम नहीं कर सकते, शादी के बाद आप काम नहीं कर सकते, you know what to say. 23. You say you're violating my human right. How many of you are going to say that in the future? If somebody says that to you, only a few. All of us. All of you should say that. I have a right to work. But it's your choice if you don't want to work. That should be your choice. That should be your decision. Not because if somebody is asking you to work or something. But if somebody stops you when you want to work, you can always say, you're violating my human right. And then right to leisure and rest. Have anybody heard about unpaid labor by women? What is unpaid labor? What is unpaid labor? One. Raise your hand so I'll give you mine. Somebody can see. They won't get paid, ma'am. They won't get paid. Okay, that's evident. Example, motherhood. Okay. Excellent. Our moms never get paid for right from changing diapers to taking care of you, giving you a bath, cooking your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and probably washing your clothes, utensils, maintaining the house, planning the menus, buying vegetables, stocking up, storing, making pickles, jams, everything. None of it. ये घर का काम है और तुमको करना पड़ता है. This is what the sociological construct is. That's called unpaid labor. And why don't we expect that from men? Our dads? Daddy office जाते हैं, आजकल तो मम्मी भी office जाती है, but still mom doubles up. So that accounts to unpaid labor. Just to give you a small statistic, right to leisure and rest. This is a right given to all women, all men, all genders equally. That's the reason why we have, when you go to work for 6 days, the 7th day you have a day off. You have a day off. So that's given at work. But at home, we women are not given a day off. Our moms or our married sisters or, they don't get a day off from the work that they do. An average Indian woman performs 4 times more unpaid work than men. An average Indian man performs only 49 minutes of unpaid labor. That is maybe fetching vegetables, very light things. But your mom performs 4 times more than that. So you do the math. Even if you may say that she is watching television, a TV serial or some कुछ देख रही है टीवी पे, मगर मटर छील रही होगी, प्याज काट रही होगी, she may be doing something else. So all those things account to unpaid labor. So your moms have that right to leisure. Leisure, sit there, relax for her own well-being, including you. Again, this is not just for your mothers, but for you also. So that you start knowing your rights. So today when you go back home, you observe what is happening in your home, how your mothers are working, and probably, hand over them that right. You're not essentially handing over them, it's their right. Make sure that she gets it, she exercises it. Right to adequate standard of living, yes, that's the reason why we have a decent dwelling, roti, kapda or makan, everything is subsidized to a certain level in India. Article 21 offers that right to decent living in India, but yet a lot needs to be done there. Right to education, we know that we have free and compulsory education and Right to Education Act that's given to us. Right to cultural, artistic and scientific life. This is something that is like our own belief and art, our expression. This is also another kind of expression, you can say. This is my culture. If you are wearing a certain type of dressing, covering your head, then that's the right to culture. So we cannot look down upon them or look at them with discrimination. It's their right to their culture. And finally, the right to free and fair work. The 29th and 30th human rights all the above rights are collective in nature. So it's our duty, we are all duty bound as human beings to uphold these human rights for the rest of us. And these rights are inalienable. So that means no matter where you go, which nationality you assume, which religion you shift to, or which faith that you follow, these rights will stay as a standard because we are human beings. This is in a nutshell about all the 30 human rights. Now, the question comes is why they are not equal, why the human rights are not given equally to all of us. There are several reasons. I wish I had an answer. We don't have answers. But the discourse is important to question, to uphold, and to see that everyone gets equal access to the human rights. We go to the next one. This is the recent survey. It was released about 2 days back. It's an inequality survey. It's conducted by Thomas Piketty. Anybody from economics background here? We should download that survey and see. This is an income inequality. The top 1% of Indian population, this is specifically to India, the top 1% of the population holds 22% of the national income. And the bottom 50% lives on 66,280 rupees per annum. This is per year. So you're looking at the vast, that red line is the income increase for the top 1% of the richest of India. Their income is constantly increasing from which year 1999 to 2019. And the poorer are getting poorer and poorer. Why do you think there is inequality here? Again, there are no right or wrong answers. I'm not asking. Yeah? Anybody? Because there is discrimination, yes. Yes, that's correct. Corruption, yes. I hear that too, yes, that's correct. Excellent. We don't speak up against the inequalities. Though we see these inequalities very blatantly, we don't see that. How many of you read the economic survey? Before every budget, we have this economic survey which is released, which shows about the corporate loans which are written off. You need to start reading those things and start questioning why. Why are the rich people not paying enough taxes and their wealth is growing exponentially, whereas the majority of Indian population are getting poorer by the day? Pandemic has thrown so many other bounces on us. Yet, we are, as much as we are very focused on our own survival, our own protection, our own family's well-being, we also have to look at our fellow human beings. Because unless all of us are equal, none of us are equal. And this not only applies to us as women, but as human beings, it applies to all of us. All of us should be equal. That doesn't mean that we all live in the same double bedroom houses and wear the same saris and same dresses, follow the same religion, speak the same language. No, that's not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is everybody has got a right to a decent life. Everybody has got a right to express themselves freely. Everybody has got a right for freedom from fear. They don't have to be afraid. They can eat good food, good nutritious food. They should be given education. They should be given equal opportunities. So all those things protect us from getting into that blue line which goes down and down every day. So if you find a child who's out of school, who's not going to school or who's in labor situation, you have to uphold that child's right to education. That's how you protect the human rights. If you find somebody confined in a house where he or she works for more than 12 hours a day and is not allowed, where freedom of movement is restricted, you have to recognize that freedom of movement is restricted and their human rights are violated. Report to the authorities. We have laws that protect the vulnerable. So that's how in that way, when you do that, you not only exercise your freedom of speech, you also uphold your fellow human beings' human rights. So that's how it works. We go to the next map. Now, this is something, how many of you are worried about the climate change? Okay? Climate change, you keep hearing this on and off again. So, how guilty are we in terms of our carbon footprint? We consume a lot, we wear polyester clothes, we don't look at sustainable fashion, we eat food which is packaged in plastic, we don't care whether this plastic is recycled or not, we cut down trees, we are guilty of so many other pleasures that we take it as a part. It's my survival. अगर मैं चावल पैकेट में से नहीं खरीदूंगी तो I'll go hungry. So should I go for right to live or should I go for the climate change? Should I worry about that? So every day you take these decisions and everything. But when you look at it, who are the worst abusers of climate change and leaving the most carbon footprint is the one who are on the top 1%. The richest. No, farmers are the ones who don't probably, who produce something and who consume right from the farm. They don't go to a supermarket to buy something. I think, if you go to villages in Telangana, you rarely find supermarkets there. You find a small provision stores where they measure it like, acha आधा kilo chahiye, pack it and give it. Most commonly this housewife or the farmer who take a bag with them and say उसमें चावल डाल के लेके आता है. Not like us where we order from Amazon and we save 20% on the groceries and we get some coupons and everything. We are the worst offenders. The rich are the worst offenders in terms of carbon, and that's why there is an inequality there. I'm not saying that we should uplift the downward segment, like the underprivileged segment of the society, and give them the same equal rights so that they can also have an equal carbon footprint. That would be a disaster. But what I'm saying is, people who are accumulating wealth, people who are getting richer by the day, are also the worst offenders in terms of climate change. So we need to recognize that, and whenever we are also consuming, as consumers, we need to be conscious because this is, again, these are all interlinked with the sustainable development goals also, which we have to uphold. Like our climate, without the climate, again we cannot exist. With the global warming, we are the most affected. Our crops are affected, and eventually it comes to us. So this is also a collective. So carbon inequality, this is a part of the report which is covered in the inequality report. That's why I just add this slide. But it's got an indirect link to the human rights. We go to the next map. Now, when we factor in gender, as we all agree, we don't have equal rights, we have a wage gap. Can anybody say how much less are we women paid when we go to work for the same job that we do when compared to men? Take a wild guess. 47%? Wow. 26% in India. We get 26% less wages than an average man. But there is a scheme by Government of India which pays equally, which is that. Anybody? There's a very, very big scheme which became very popular during the pandemic when the unlockdown happened. Manrega? Manrega, where you have a daily wage labor, where women and men get equal wages. Because it's been written in that particular law saying that you have to pay for the same work, you have to pay the same wages for women. So that equality doesn't prevail very much in the corporate world. Again, that brings you back to expressing your voice and saying, asking for it. Ask for the equal wages. Again, when you look at labor force participation rate, it's dropped down to 16%. It was 18.1% to 19.2% somewhere in 2019, but it fell. Why do you think the reason is? Post-pandemic. We just spoke about it. Because women end up doing more and more unpaid labor, during pandemic we doubled. Because it's always work from home, so they are working from home, they're doing paid work as well as unpaid work. And because unpaid work burden is more, they are leaving the paid work and focusing more on the unpaid work. When the schools closed, how many of you had siblings who were in school? None of you, you must have seen your neighbors where the little kids stay at home and moms are the ones who watch them and made sure that they attended online classes or they did not forget the alphabet or whatever. The dads had a very little role, so there is no right to equality there. Moms are doing more work, or sisters are doing more work, taking care of the younger siblings. So that's the reason why the female labor force participation has come down. So it affects, so it is not only related to your family or your own unit, wherever you are dwelling. It has got a larger repercussions across the nation, across the world. So it's very important for you to recognize that why women are coming out of work, why there is a wage gap, and why India's rank has fallen considerably in the gender inequality index. We go to the next map. This is something that is a very uncomfortable thing most of us don't talk about. We talk about gender, we talk about income inequality, but we don't talk about caste inequality. When we look at caste inequality, you must have seen this movie called Love Story. Yes, it's a nice movie, right? Finally, the couple reunite and they get married and they live happily ever after. How many of you have seen Color Photo? Yeah. What was the ending there? The guy dies, right? He gets killed. He gets killed. Now that's the reality, but this is the fiction. The Color Photo is the reality, whereas Love Story is a fiction. Those of you didn't see both the movies, I recommend you to watch these two movies. It's a very, very important movie of our time. These two movies are. You need to watch these movies in order to understand. In Color Photo, they did not use the word caste at all. They did not use the word caste at all in the entire movie. They use the word color. They use the skin color of the protagonist. Whereas in the other movie, they used caste because that's the privilege of the director and also the actors who acted in it. That's how caste is ingrained in our society. We don't speak about it because not speaking about it is also our privilege. We need to recognize our privilege and do that kind of giving up our privilege in order to uplift the people who are from the underprivileged sections. That's how we address the caste inequality. Now that's like just an untouchability map which is done by a couple of researchers for India today. Those are the districts which still practice untouchability in India. And untouchability is a crime in India. That's the untouchability map. When all humans are equal, when all the 30 human rights are applicable to everyone, when our constitution also says that we are equal, why do we still have untouchability? Because we don't use our human right to speech. We don't voice it out. We don't call it out when we see it. We ignore, we move on. Chalo, apna nahi hai. It is not affecting me, so let me go. That is how we ignore the caste inequality in our country. Please go to the next one. Again, these are some of the districts where the worst districts, worst states to be a Dalit in India. Dalit is somebody who belongs to a scheduled caste or a scheduled tribe or a minority community who are from the most oppressed section. And when you look at factoring the other things like right to education, they are the ones, they are the segment of population in India who don't have the access to education, who don't have equal rights, who don't have the equal opportunities. Yes, somebody may say, yes, you do have reservations in jobs, in seats, but then when you can't even go to the school, what good is a university reservation of a particular seat is when you can't make it to the high school? Most of the children, we did a survey in Labour Department where we found that at least 23% of the scheduled caste children are in child labour. I haven't found one privileged caste person in child labour so far. In my 11 years career with Labour Department, I haven't seen one privileged caste person. It's always the underprivileged caste and the oppressed caste who are pushed into slavery, who are pushed into bonded labour, who are pushed into child labour, who are violated of their rights, which makes today addressing this inequality more and more important because we have to speak up for them. We go to the next map. How do you measure inequality? It's like all these rights are very good and everything, but how do you actually put a number to it? How do you measure to it? I can do a lot of exercises also, but we don't have that kind of time right now. Equality in outcomes, you can see how, yes, it'll take 5 minutes, we'll be wrapping up. So equality in outcomes, when you look at the equality in education, how do you can analyze the census data, you can analyze the National Family Health Survey data. All these survey reports are available on the public domain on the government websites. There is data.gov.in. If you go to that website, you can download all these reports. You can look at it, how Dalits perform in education, in literacy levels, in terms of violent crimes on women, violent crimes on children, and you have National Crime Records Bureau data. All these reports, if you sit down and start extracting the data and start looking for information, you will know the kind of discrepancies and the violations that you can see. And then you can even recommend the government to say that, then you will not question the kind of reservations that the Dalits have today. Because it is much needed, and we need to look at equality and opportunity also. How are these opportunities accessible? We do have a wonderful V Hub, Women Entrepreneurs Hub, which is located way beyond Gachibowli. But how is a young woman from Mancherial going to the Gachibowli rehab and trying to file an entrepreneurship opportunity, apply for a loan or something like that? How many of these opportunities are accessible to all classes of society, all genders, all income groups, all castes? That's a question that we need to constantly ask. Equality in social status. Why does your domestic worker who comes to wash dishes drinks in a different teacup other than your tea set? These are the questions that you need to constantly start asking, constantly start answering. They are very uncomfortable questions. I wish we can answer all of them in one go. I wish we can all transform collectively as a society and uphold everybody's human rights. But unfortunately, we are all covered in layers, layers of inequality. So each of these layers, whenever we break them, we will make our society and our country more equal. That's how we uphold. It's a very simple thing, one step at a time. Start looking at the women in your family. Start looking at the children in your family. Start looking at the most oppressed persons in your community, in your neighborhood. And start upholding their rights. Because if you don't speak up, they are not even aware of their rights. Today you have the fortune to sit in here in this classroom, understand the English language, comprehend whatever I'm saying, try to look at the slide presentation and see that there are 30 human rights. Probably you already know. But then there is an opportunity for you to use them, put them into practice. That's how we are going to address our inequalities. If you have any questions, we'll take them. I'm available after the class also because I think we are close to the lunch time. But we will all collectively take a human rights pledge. I'll go to the next slide and see, this is observe, educate, and you need to start the discourse. Ma'am, we'll go to the next slide also, please. And the next one too. Yeah, this is a pledge. Again, I need a volunteer who would read this pledge for all of us so we can collectively take and we'll end the session. Anyone?
I will respect your rights, regardless of who you are. I will uphold your rights, even when I disagree with you. When anyone's human rights are denied, everyone's rights are undermined. So I will stand up. I will raise my voice. I will take action. I will use my rights to stand up for your rights.
Thank you very much. We'll end the session here. If anybody has any questions, I'll take them. You can all sit down. Thank you.
I, B. Shweta, Department of Mathematics, here to give you the vote of thanks. I deem it's a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. Let me first of all start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's event a resounding success. On behalf of Anti-Ragging Cell, I extend a hearty vote of thanks to our Honorable Chief Guest, Ms. Varsha Bhargavi, who spared time from our busy schedule to grace the occasion. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts which have enlightened our minds and shown us a new We all are inspired by your great words, ma'am. Thank you so much. I express my heartfelt thanks to Correspondent Sister Shamala, Principal Sister Emmy Gracivas, Sisters of Management, and all the heads of the departments for their valuable contribution, guidance, and encouragement in all our efforts. I also thank all the faculty and the students of ARC for making this event a grand success. I owe special gratitude to the non-teaching staff who worked hard behind the screen and made this event a memorable success. I thank Madhu sir for clicking the photographs, and I also thank Srinivas sir, Pallavi ma'am and Bhagya ma'am for technical support. Last but not the least, I thank each and everyone for making this event a huge success. Thank you.